Today, we're discussing the Sailor King of Pen. And here's something I never thought I'd say. The Sailor King of Pen nowadays is an absolute bargain. So here it is next to the venerable Mont Blanc 149. And we're going to talk about how these two pens compare in a minute. But let me give you a quick history lesson, or let's walk back in time for a minute. And I want to make a point about the cost of pens. So this is my trusty Pilot 74. Many of you know this is my most used pen in my collection. I looked up the price of when I bought this. I bought this pen in 2015 from Amazon. At the time, it was $78.12. Today, this pen is $220 from Amazon. This is the Pilot 845. I bought this pen 2 years ago from Asia. It was $328. Today, this pen on the gray market is almost $600. And if you buy it from a US retailer, it costs more than that. Now, the Sailor King of Pen, on the other hand, this is the first King of Pen I bought. It was actually a gift from my wife back in 2016. I picked this model because at the time, it was the least expensive Sailor King of Pen. This is the Pro Gear variant in the demonstrator. This was the least expensive Sailor King of Pen I could find. Back in 2016, this pen was $412. Today, this King of Pen, which is the 1911 model, but it's the same thing, right? It has the same 21 karat nib. This pen is $400.96. So it's one of the only Japanese pens, or any pen really, in my collection that over the past 9 or 10 years, it hasn't really changed in price. I don't know how long that's gonna be. I should timestamp this. Today is, we are in August of 2025. I'm not sponsored by a retailer, so I don't wanna pretend like I'm loyal to somebody, but if you Google it, you'll find who I'm talking about. Reputable reseller with a warranty, $400.96. So it's one of the only pens in my collection that the price has really not changed much over the past, call it 10 years. So off the bat, that's one of the key reasons I think this is a great value. If you compare it to other pens, this pen is on the cheap. The other reason is when you compare this to the pen it clearly got some inspiration from, which is the Mont Blanc 149. These pens are very similar in size. So if you look at them side by side, the Sailor is a little bit longer. However, if you post these pens, I'm going to try not to hit the tripod this time. If you post these pens, you'll see that they are almost exactly the same size. So if you look at the top to bottom, they are almost exactly the same size. They are the same width, there's the same length, they're both plastic. The nibs are almost the same size as well. The one on the left is the Mont Blanc, the one on the right is the Sailor. The Sailor is ever so slightly smaller than the Mont Blanc. However, the Mont Blanc is an 18 karat gold nib and the Sailor is 21 karat. So in terms of gold content, you're not really lacking much from the Sailor. There's a few other differences between these pens. Overall, I will say that the Mont Blanc feels like a more quality item. This is subjective, but the resin, the proprietary or precious resin that Mont Blanc uses, feels nicer to the touch. It doesn't feel as brittle as that of the Sailor. However, I checked on the Mont Blanc website this morning. The 149 is around $1,200 new. And you used to be able to get these pens at a variety of gray market places for a bit of a discount, but that doesn't seem to be the case. At least I wasn't able to find any reputable dealers where you can buy this pen. I bought one 149 new a few years ago to commemorate a career milestone, and I bought it in Europe to save a bit. The exchange rate was favorable at the time, but even then, the pen was well over $800. So at $400, the Mont Blanc is at most half the price of the Sailor is at most half the price of the Mont Blanc. And if you assume you're buying this Mont Blanc from an authorized reseller at the retail price, the Sailor is 1/3 the price of the Mont Blanc. So for 1/3 the price, what are you missing? Well, some people say that the Mont Blanc has a more sophisticated filling mechanism, which is true. The Mont Blanc is a piston and the Sailor is a cartridge. But I don't really see that as a drawback, because if you look at how the Sailor is made, this is no joke of a cartridge converter system. It's very, very well built. This is not like the section that you would find in a normal Sailor pen. This is clearly something special. And Japanese pens tend not to have piston fillers. If you look back to the history of Japanese pens back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, they tended to be two-way shutoff valves. They tended to be eyedroppers. And even today, if you look at pens in the really high end, like the Namiki Emperor and those type of pens, they tend to be eyedroppers with the shutoff valve. There are Japanese piston-filled pens, like the Pilot 92. There was even a Sailor King of Pen with a piston filler. There's the Sailor Rialos that are piston fillers. But this might be a controversial statement, but in all of those cases, I prefer the cartridge converter model over than the piston, because it just doesn't feel like these Japanese makers, it doesn't feel like the piston mechanisms are things that they do particularly well. So I wouldn't call that as a benefit of the Mont Blanc, that it's a piston filler. So overall, yes, the Mont Blanc is a nicer pen, but at 1/3 to 1/2 the cost, the Sailor is tremendous value. And that doesn't even get me to what the Sailor does better than the Mont Blanc, which is the nib. So in my opinion, the Sailor with its 21 karat nib is better, sort of apples to apples, with the Mont Blanc nib. So if you compare like a Sailor fine, or a Sailor doesn't come in fine, but a Sailor medium with the Mont Blanc medium, I prefer the Sailor nib. Obviously, Mont Blanc has a bunch of custom nibs available. Sailor has a bunch of custom nibs available, and when you each has their own strengths when you get into the specialty grinds. But apples to apples, medium compared to medium, broad compared to broad, I personally prefer the way the Sailor nibs write. So for those reasons, I think this pen is tremendous value at $400, especially when a Pilot 74 is half the price and a 845 is more than the price of the King of Pen, which to me seems ridiculous. So enough blabbering. Let me show you how this Sailor 21 karat King of Pen nib writes. So be careful of the tripod here. This is a Sailor King of Pen. This is a 21 karat broad nib. And the camera might be picking up some noises or sounds that the nib is making across the page. It's a pretty sensitive mic. This nib is extremely smooth. This is, in my opinion, the best of the Sailor nibs because it does have that traditional Sailor feedback. You can probably hear it. But it has that feedback, but it's a combination of that feedback and a very, very smooth nib. So it has the precision of having that feedback, but the smoothness and the ink flow of a very, very nice, very juicy, smooth, pleasant nib. So for $400, and again, this is August 2025. I don't know when Sailor is going to jump on the price increase bandwagon and change this, but for $400, this King of Pen is an absolute bargain, especially compared with pens like the Mont Blanc 149. So anyway, I hope that was fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.